Sean Diddy Combs is facing another legal loss. Days before the rap mogul's scheduled sentencing for his prostitution-related convictions on October 3rd, a U.S. district judge has denied his team's request for an acquittal and a new trial. The judge, who presided over Combs' lengthy sex trafficking case, noted in his September 30th ruling, obtained by Deadline, the government at trial presented overwhelming evidence of Combs' guilt under the Mann Act on many occasions, with respect to his ex-girlfriends Cassie and a woman who only went by Jane.
This Friday, October 3rd, Sean Diddy Combs faces his sentencing hearing, and he's hoping to dance his way right out of jail. In fact, he even asked Judge Subramanian if he could ditch the prison orange and show up in his own clothes. While the judge hasn't ruled yet, the government just filed a massive 189-page sentencing memo. In it, prosecutors argue why Diddy deserves at least 135 months in federal prison, more than 11 years, plus maximum financial penalties. They attached photos of Cassie, referenced the infamous hotel incident, and included emotional statements from Cassie, Deontay Nash, Capricorn Clark, and others. Prosecutors say his crimes stretched over a decade, built on violence, drugs, and manipulation. Though cleared of the most severe charges, the jury still convicted him under the Mann Act. And according to the feds, Diddy shows no remorse, instead blaming victims while leaving lasting scars.
Although the 55-year-old was acquitted of the more serious charges in his case, sex trafficking and racketeering charges, he was convicted on 2 counts of transporting individuals for prostitution in July. Each count carries a maximum prison sentence of 10 years, although the prosecution urged the judge to sentence Combs, who has pleaded not guilty to all charges, to a total of 11 years for both charges. The government wrote in its September 30th filing obtained by NBC News, the defendant will not be punished for any crimes of which he was acquitted, of course, but punishment for his crimes of conviction must take into account the manner in which he committed them.
Prosecutors aren't stopping with the charges Diddy was convicted on. They're dragging in a series of disturbing allegations, saying it paints a full picture of his violence and control. The defense, though, calls this spillover prejudice. They argue if he can't walk free, then he deserves a brand new trial on just the 2 charges he was actually convicted of. Prosecutors point to the alleged kidnapping of Capricorn Clark, the break-in at Kid Cudi's home, the explosion of Kid Cudi's car, and that infamous 2016 Los Angeles hotel footage where Diddy was seen chasing Cassie, slamming her to the floor, and kicking her. He was never indicted for assault. Yet, prosecutors say it proves a violent pattern tied to the Mann Act crimes. They're also citing claims of sexual assault, drugging, and exploitation. Some never charged, others tied to counts he beat in court. The defense says it's unfair, but prosecutors insist federal law lets judges weigh it all at sentencing.
Now to the Sean Diddy Combs case. We may learn this week if he will be released on bond while he awaits sentencing. His lawyers filed a request asking the judge to release Combs on $50 million bond. Combs was convicted earlier this month on charges of transportation to engage in prostitution.
The government insists that even though Diddy was acquitted on some charges, the evidence of violence and control still matters. They argue his sentence must reflect the true scope of his behavior. Prosecutors point to Cassie's years of abuse, where he called her moldable, beat her, forced drug-fueled sessions with escorts, and even used secret recordings to blackmail her. Then came Jane, between 2021 and 2024, whose relationship with him spiraled into nights of drugs, escorts, and control through money. In June 2024, prosecutors say he assaulted her, then forced her into a degrading act with an escort, with medical evidence shown in court. Because of this, they're demanding every sentencing enhancement available: threats, bodily harm, targeting vulnerable victims, obstruction, and abuse of power. They want at least 135 months, noting that even traffickers serve harsh time. And prosecutors say Diddy, despite his fame, deserves no less.
Tonight, prosecutors asking a judge to sentence Sean Diddy Combs to more than 11 years in federal prison, arguing he engaged in violence and put others in fear. A stark contrast to Combs' legal team, who are seeking 14 months, which would see him walk free in a matter of weeks, as he's already served 13 months in prison.
Look for the judge to land somewhere in the middle, split the difference, a sentence of maybe 4 to 6 years.
Now let's turn to Cassie's powerful letter to Judge Supermanian. She writes of living in constant fear, trapped in a cycle of violence and humiliation. Cassie says from the age of 19, Sean Diddy Combs used threats, drugs, and his control over her career to keep her bound in more than a decade of abuse. She describes being forced into weekly encounters with hired escorts, ordered to dress a certain way, fueled by substances, and left broken, sick, and exhausted. Saying no meant punishment, losing her car, her phone, even her freedom. Cassie recalls how Diddy threatened to leak tapes if she disobeyed, destroying not just her, but the safety of her family. In her words, his power erased her independence until she felt she had no choice but to submit. And behind the threats was violence, being hit, punched, dragged, and thrown to the floor. 11 years of brutality, now laid bare before the court.
It just came at the right time.
Cassie Ventura breaking her social media silence 3 months after her emotional testimony in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. But the message has nothing to do with her ex.
The moment she opened her mouth, you could see that Combs was listening intently to everything that she has to say.
Cassie told the judge how the jury had seen it all. Photos of bruises on her back from Sean Diddy Combs kicking her, a deep cut on her eye after he slammed her into a bed frame, and chilling footage from 2016 showing her running from a freak-off, only to be thrown to the floor, curling into a fetal position as he beat her. Makeup artists paid by Combs covered her bruises, but the scars remain. She described living in constant fear, anticipating demands and punishments, numbing herself with drugs he supplied just to survive the abuse. The defense tried to frame their relationship as a modern love story, but Cassie called it a decade of violence and degradation. She revealed she spent years rebuilding her life, rehab, therapy, and battling suicidal thoughts, just to heal from the trauma she endured at his hands.
Combs was convicted on prostitution charges over the summer, but acquitted of sex trafficking and racketeering, which carried up to a life sentence in prison. A source familiar with Combs' strategy telling NBC News that the mogul plans to address the court himself during his sentencing hearing. Both sides have submitted letters to the judge, one written by Cassie Ventura, Combs' former girlfriend, who was a key prosecution witness, writing in part, "I am so scared that if he walks free, his first actions will be swift retribution towards me and others who spoke up." Combs' 85-year-old mother writing that her son has made some terrible mistakes in his life, which I know he recognizes.
Cassie admits that even as she tries to rebuild her life with her husband and children, the shadow of Sean Diddy Combs still lingers. She says the nightmares and flashbacks are constant, forcing her to remain in therapy just to cope. Her fear runs so deep that she moved her family out of New York, living quietly in hopes of staying safe. Cassie warns that if Diddy is freed, she believes his retaliation will be swift and cruel. She rejects his defense team's claims that he has changed or wants to mentor others, calling it a disgusting lie. To her, he is still the manipulator, the trafficker, the abuser. She recalls how he denied her allegations until video proof surfaced, only then offering a hollow apology online. That footage, she says, is now part of his legacy, evidence that his cruelty can never be erased. Cassie closes her letter with words that cut deep. She says for more than a decade, Sean Diddy Combs stripped her of power and dignity. Yet her pain was real and must be considered. She reminds the court that while the jury may not have grasped how force and coercion drove her into those encounters, she knows the truth, and his sentence should reflect it. Reliving every moment, every memory has caused her immense emotional pain, but she came forward anyway. Cassie pleads that the judge weigh the courage it took for victims to speak and the damage Combs inflicted on countless lives. She ends with a simple hope that justice will honor the truth of her suffering and that the years of abuse she endured will not be ignored. Signed, Cassandra Ventura Fine. Aside from Cassie's powerful testimony, the judge also received letters from several of Sean Diddy Combs' former employees and associates, people who once worked inside his empire. These letters described physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, with one writer even claiming Diddy personally assaulted them. Each begged the court for a harsher sentence, pointing out that his unchecked violence and manipulation left permanent scars. Together, the letters prove Cassie's story wasn't an isolated case, but part of a long-standing pattern. Prosecutors argue it's no longer just one person's word against Diddy. It's a chorus of voices exposing how he used wealth and influence to control and abuse. Now, it's up to the judge to decide how much time he'll serve. With Cassie's words, Jane's testimony, and these other letters on record, the world is finally seeing the truth hidden behind the doors of Diddy's empire.